so today I want to cover step by step how to do wholesale on Amazon in 2023 and beyond. This is going to be equally applicable next year as well. So I'm going to assume first off the bat that you already have some basic knowledge of what Amazon FBA is and you already have an account set up. If you don't, I've got other videos you can take a look at below that walk you through the process of setting that up as well. So step one is you're going to have register a business. Okay, so in Canada, you can open a business under your own name as a sole proprietor. That's the easiest way to go. And then you can register a doing business as name. So you could create a name for your company. You can do a registry search, depending on what province you're in, and put a name to your company, which is going to look more professional when you're dealing with wholesalers. You may want to incorporate if you've already got revenues within your business and you want to keep money in the company and grow it. In Canada, there's a lot of advantages to small corporations. Like where I live in British Columbia, the combined income tax rate for a small corp under 500,000 a year, I believe it is, in income revenue, is 11% combined. So that's a lot cheaper or a lot lower tax rate than you'd be paying if you were a sole proprietor and all the profits have to be declared on your personal income. So there's pros and cons with both. Definitely consult with an accountant and even a lawyer to look at your entire financial picture, your goals, your strategies to figure out what business structure is right for you. Step number two is finding suppliers, obviously, and also finding good suppliers, which is going to be very difficult for a lot of new sellers to figure out. I have multiple strategies that I've taught in other videos that you can watch below on how to locate suppliers. And one of the most effective ways that really revolutionized my own business was starting on Amazon first and finding suppliers based on listings and products that are already selling very well on Amazon. That was a game changer for me. One of the things I'll mention right now as well is that wholesale was revolutionary to my own business because beforehand I was doing online and retail arbitrage, mostly online arbitrage. The challenge with that, while it was great because I could find things I could sell very quickly and flip them, it was a constant treasure hunt. So every time I'd run out of sale items or deals, as we called them, I'd have to replace that income with another deal or another item I could sell profitably. With wholesale, instead of continually finding new deals and replacing income, I was able to add to my income. So once I landed one good wholesale account, I could piggyback onto that and keep that going month after month and add another account and add to my income. I'm no longer replacing that income. That allowed me to scale my business. That's the main reason I was able to take my Amazon FBA business into a full-time income within 6 months. Step number three, you need to have an effective contact strategy, and you need to both call and email suppliers. You're going to find that most suppliers, the initial way you're going to reach out to them is email. And what I recommend people do is track in a spreadsheet and make a list of 50 suppliers. And again, I have strategies to show you how to find these suppliers. And then you'll track each one of those. So you'll start out with their email address and you'll send an email and you make a little check mark in your spreadsheet that you've contacted them. And then you might want to follow up with a phone call and see if they received your email or if they had any questions, or you can get someone live on the phone. Speaking of email, one of the things I highly suggest you do from day one is get a domain name registered that relates to your business, and then use that domain name to send emails to suppliers because it looks a lot more professional than using at gmail.com email address. And there's a really easy way to do this. In fact, the other thing I'd recommend you do, and it takes less than half an hour to do it, is create a basic landing page or website for your business that explains who you are. And so when customers or suppliers click on your website, they can see that you're a professional looking business and you don't look quite as amateurish. That'll increase your odds of getting approval. In the Seller Academy Masterclass, I give you multiple templates, by the way, that you can use to reach out to wholesalers. And these have been perfected over the years of my own business to give you the best response rates. If you try to wing this on your own, you're going to get a lot of mixed results. Step number four is finding suppliers. And again, I have multiple ways to locate suppliers, but I would suggest you start with Amazon and go through a list. And I have other videos explaining this in detail, but what I like to do is go through different categories in Amazon and filter my way down into the subcategories and look for products that are selling well. And I would suggest you stick with one category at a time for starting out. Otherwise, it becomes too overwhelming. So you might go into like pet supplies, for example. And within pet supplies, you might go into cats. And under cats, you might go into cat toys, just as an example. And then you're going to scroll through the pages of search results. We have a thing that we use called filtering, where you can eliminate products that aren't going to be necessarily a good fit for wholesale and laser focus to the types of products that are already selling well on Amazon, but you could become a supplier yourself, in many cases be the only FBA seller of those products, and make a lot of money doing it. That was revolutionary in my business. The other option is you go and you find distributors, and you can go to many distributors. Distributors are basically middlemen. They'll let you buy in smaller quantities, pay with a credit card, but the margins are typically slimmer, and you have to scour through price lists. With all of wholesale, keep in mind it's a numbers game, and you're going to have to build a huge list and then track that list of people you've contacted. The other thing some people have a really hard time understanding with wholesale is that rejection is normal. You're going to get told no almost all the time initially. You're going to hear, we don't need any more Amazon sellers. Your goal is to keep that funnel fed, keep finding new leads and filtering through and then following up. It typically takes, on average, 4 to 5 points of contact through phone, email, maybe even text or social media to get a reply back from some suppliers. Now, during Q4, that can be even more challenging because people are busy. You might even have suppliers hang up on you and be completely rude to you. Don't take it personally. This is part of the game. While wholesale is great that you can add to your income, and once you have accounts, you keep building on that, it's a lot more effort and work up front to land those accounts, to get that conversation going with a brand owner and be able to secure those profitable items. So if you can't handle rejection and you're not willing to put in the work to put together a list of, say, 50 vendors per day, if you can put that in, or even every couple of days if you're busy, anyone can find time while you're watching TV and you have a laptop open on the couch to do that, by the way. But you have to put that work in, then you have to reach out, then you have to follow up, and you have to be willing to pick up the phone during business hours as well. Excuse me. Step number 5 is product research. And this is the biggest reason people lose money. You know, when you buy something wholesale, you make your profit on the day that you make that purchase. Okay, so what you need to be aware of is not just the current rank of a product on Amazon, but the sales history. Or is it a seasonal product? For example, is it something that sells better in Halloween or Christmas? And the way you look at that is you use a tool called Keepa. The Keepa graph is your best friend, and that gives you like a stock price history chart. And it shows you the history of the rank of an item. It also shows you the price history of the item, what the FBA price was, if Amazon have ever been a seller, because I have a general rule that if Amazon are selling the product or sold the product in the recent past, I move on. Because as a third-party seller, this business is all about relationships, and you need to be able to work with a brand owner, ideally, where you can add continual value to that brand owner, whether that's improving their listings, giving them feedback about customer complaints, all of those sorts of things. But if they're dealing direct with Amazon, they're big enough that they don't need you. You're not going to be able to add value, and competing against Amazon's a fool's errand in most cases, and it's not going to get you where you need to be. The other thing you're going to need to get really familiar with is the Amazon Revenue Calculator. That's a free tool through Seller Central that'll give you your exact profit margin when you put in the sell price, whether it's FBA or FBM. We focus on FBA, and what your exact profit will be when you put your cost of what you buy that good for. So you have to be able to figure that out, and you have to be able to establish pricing up front to know where your margins are. An easier way of doing all this, and I'd highly recommend it if you're serious about getting into wholesale, is invest in Helium 10 or Jungle Scout. I tend to prefer Helium 10 nowadays for a variety of reasons, but Jungle Scout's equally as good in many ways too. This combines Keepa, sales estimates, rank, your profit estimates, and all of that stuff in one easy to use on-screen view. So you can save a boatload of time, and you can use it for what I referred to earlier as filtering products as well, to really fast track finding suppliers, filtering out the ones that aren't profitable, and even setting target profit margins as well. Now, step number 6 is listing the product. The first thing you want to do is make sure, if you're going to buy a product, that you're ungated for it. If you're not, the good news is by getting legitimate receipts or a letter of approval from a brand owner it's very easy to get ungated. But beware that it might take some time or multiple attempts to get approval to sell that brand or to sell that product category on Amazon's platform. So if you aren't ungated yet for a category, I would go light on the quantity of goods that you need to purchase. Even go to a distributor and maybe just break even at worst. So you're not really making any profit, but you're using it to buy a smaller quantity and getting gated in that category or brand. And once you are, then you can go to a larger distributor or a brand owner directly and order bigger quantities, knowing that you can sell them right away because you're approved, if that makes sense. So getting ungated intimidates a lot of people, but it's actually very simple to do when you have wholesale accounts you're dealing with. And I love gated categories and brands because it means there's a barrier to entry. And most new sellers shy away from that or are intimidated by that and go for the low-hanging fruit. So what it means is for you as a wholesale seller, you're probably going to have less competition, which is a good thing, right? If a product's gated or requires a few extra steps. That's a bonus. And I teach you in the Seller Academy how to get ungated. It's very simple, but it does take persistence in following a certain format. Step number 7, this is really important, and that's negotiation. Every supplier you contact is going to have a different discount strategy. Some are going to offer free freight potentially over a certain volume, or a percentage discount based on a sliding tier of volume or dollar amount that you purchase from them. With all wholesalers, volume, of course, speaks loudest, right? So if you're buying smaller quantities, don't expect to get the best discounts. But once you start scaling up, you give yourself some really compelling competitive advantages against smaller sellers. Excuse me. And the reason for that is you can start shipping less than truckload. So even with Amazon's discounted UPS rates, it's still a lot more expensive than like a pallet or less than truckload. So you could reduce your cost per item to ship to Amazon from a supplier from, let's say, $1.50 a unit down to like 25 cents a unit. And that's why I often see people who are looking at other sellers on Amazon saying, oh, how are they making any money? They're losing money when they're selling that. No, they're probably a much higher volume seller taking lower margins, but they're moving so much volume, the dollar amount of that profit and for the time involved for that person running that business makes a lot of sense. It's all about volume and scale when you get into that level of wholesale, which ultimately you would want to get to yourself. Step number 8 is shipping and prepping. So the first thing you're going to need to do, especially if you're selling out of the country in the US from Canada, is register for a prep and ship company. And I recommend that you do that right away. There's many in our group in the files section. There's other websites you can go to that list all the prep companies and rate them. Every prep company is going to have all of its own requirements. So do your research and find one that works best for you. But having a commercial shipping address when you're dealing with a wholesale supplier is critical. You look more professional than having it shipped to a residential address. It's going to save you a ton of time and money. And the goal of Amazon isn't to be labeling and shipping products yourself. If you're doing that, you're cutting off your growth potential because now you've become your biggest bottleneck. There are some people that live in less expensive regions and have warehouses and do a lot of the prep work themselves. That can work, but I'm seeing a lot of those guys even outsource to prep companies as well, because by the time you factor in the cost of running a building, electricity, insurance, employees, and dealing with all the bullshit around hiring and firing employees, it's typically just a lot less hassle to pay the extra money, trim your profits slightly, but have less headaches by outsourcing that stuff. As you get familiar with suppliers, some of your suppliers, once you've built a relationship with them, you get to a point where they can ship to Amazon directly, even further reducing your costs, right? So these are things you have to keep in mind, and these are goals I'd like you to focus on long-term in your business. It's all about scale and economies of scale and volume discounts, and those pennies become large numbers at scale. Step number 9 is your pricing. So, of course, it's very important that you set some minimum profit margins that you're willing to accept. I teach that in the Seller Academy on what expectations to have realistically dealing with various types of suppliers and how to hold those margins and how not to get involved with race to the bottoms, even how to sell for much more than anybody else in that listing is selling for and still win the buy box 90% of the time. There are effective strategies I teach that you can use that will help you be the best seller on that listing, getting the majority of the buy box sales, and also making the most profit. This helps with your suppliers because suppliers often want you to stick to a minimum advertised pricing. And what that means is they have brick and mortar distributors that are selling the product at a fixed price, or they can't sell below a certain price, to keep the level playing field. Nothing ticks off suppliers more when some rando goes on Amazon selling a product for less than their brick and mortar retailers, because they complain and say, well, we have overheads, we have stores to run. It's not fair that you're selling to some guy on Amazon with no overheads that can undercut us on price. So you can make more money. You're keeping them happy by meeting their minimum advertised price, and you're running the buy box. These are all successful strategies I've implemented in my business that I can teach you how to do in the Seller Academy Masterclass, with a link below to this video if you're interested in learning more. If you want one-on-one coaching specifically on wholesale, that's my area of expertise. I have very limited availability right now during Q4, but hit me up. I'll put a link down to the coaching below, and you can register, and we can book some time maybe in January where we could get together and do some Zoom calls, and I can help you grow your business effectively that way. Do me a solid. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe. Pass this and share it with friends if you found it helpful. I'm going to be producing a lot more content like this, and my goal is to give you guys as much value as possible.